The stars had always been a mystery, a silent promise of something greater, until the day they answered back. It wasn't a friendly hello. No, the message from the Galactic Council was clear, cold, and absolute. Humanity is hereby declared a subordinate species. Compliance is mandatory. Just like that, in the blink of an eye, we were no longer the rulers of our own destiny. But here's the thing about humans. We don't bow. We don't break. And when pushed, we push back harder. The Council had ruled over 1,000 civilizations, enforcing order with an iron fist. To them, we were just another primitive race to be controlled, another name on their long list of conquered worlds. They didn't understand what they were dealing with. See, humans, we've spent our entire history fighting against nature, against each other, against the impossible. And now, against the galaxy itself. It started with a single ship appearing over Earth, sleek and alien, broadcasting their decree to every screen on the planet. Governments panicked. Leaders scrambled. But while the powerful argued over surrender, others were already moving. A ragtag team of scientists, soldiers, and rebels, people who refused to accept that humanity's fate was written in someone else's stars. They found something, a flaw, a weakness, because no empire, no matter how vast, is invincible. The Council thought they had us cornered. They thought we'd kneel. But in the shadows, plans were being drawn, secrets uncovered. And then, the unthinkable happened. A signal buried deep in old transmissions, something the Council had missed. A message not meant for them, but for us. A key, a weapon, a way to turn the tables. Now, the clock is ticking. The Council's enforcers are closing in, their fleets darkening the skies. But humanity, we're not running. We're not hiding. We're preparing. Because if they want a war, they'll get one. And they'll learn the hard way. Underestimating us was their last mistake. But here's the question. What happens when a species with nothing left to lose finally strikes back? The signal was unlike anything we'd ever seen. An encrypted pulse buried in decades-old radio waves, hidden in plain sight. At first, the scientists thought it was just cosmic noise, an echo from some long-dead star. But then the patterns emerged. Numbers, coordinates, and something else. A warning. Whoever sent it knew the Council, knew their weaknesses, and they wanted us to fight back. The team working on it wasn't official. No governments backed them. No flags flew over their heads. Just a handful of people who refused to let Earth die quietly. There was the engineer who had once designed deep space comms for a living, now scouring old satellite data for clues. The ex-soldier who had seen too many wars to believe in peaceful surrender. The linguist who could crack alien code like it was poetry. And the hacker, no one knew their real name, just that they could slip past any firewall, even the Council's. Together, they were the only ones crazy enough to think humanity still had a chance. The coordinates led to a derelict station orbiting Pluto, forgotten by time. Getting there was suicide. The Council's patrols swarmed the system, watching for any sign of resistance. But desperation makes people reckless. A stolen ship, jury-rigged with stealth tech, carried them through the black. Every second was a gamble. One wrong move, one misfiring engine, and they'd be space dust before they even got close. When they finally reached the station, it was worse than they imagined. Ancient, broken, like something out of a nightmare. The air was thick with dust, the walls scared by something that wasn't human. But in the heart of the wreckage, they found it. A chamber, untouched, and inside, a single, pulsing light. A message, a voice. It spoke in fragments, a recording from a species long gone. They called themselves the Varick, the first civilization the Council had ever broken. They'd fought. They'd lost. But before they died, they left something behind. A weapon. Not of fire and metal, but of knowledge. The Council's rule depended on control, on fear. But fear only works if the ones beneath you don't know the truth. The Varric had uncovered it. The Council's secret, the reason they conquered worlds instead of coexisting, the reason they feared rebellion more than anything. And now, that secret was in human hands. But time was running out. Back on Earth, the Council's forces were tightening their grip. Cities fell under curfew. Dissenters vanished in the night. The skies were full of their ships, watching, waiting for the moment humanity finally broke. What the team didn't know was that the Council had already noticed their little expedition, and they weren't happy. As the team raced to decode the last of the Varric's message, something shifted in the darkness outside the station. A shadow where there shouldn't be one. A whisper of engines cutting through the silence. They weren't alone anymore. The Council had found them. And they weren't coming to talk. The shadow outside the station wasn't just a patrol. It was a kill squad. The Council didn't take risks, not with species that dared to dig up buried truths. The team barely had seconds to react before the first plasma rounds tore through the derelict hull. The engineer slammed a hand on the console, sealing the chamber doors just as a blast rocked the corridor outside. Oxygen alarms screamed. The station wasn't just old, it was falling apart around them. The soldier grabbed the linguist's arm, dragging them toward a maintenance shaft. Move, they'll breach in minutes. The hacker stayed behind, fingers flying over the terminal, frantically downloading the last of the Varric's data. We can't leave this, they shouted, but the pulsing light on the screen was flickering, dying. Whatever secrets the Varric had left, they were slipping away. Back on Earth, the Council's occupation was tightening like a noose. Protests in the streets turned to riots. Then the riots turned to silence. People whispered about disappearances, scientists, engineers, anyone who might know how to fight back. But in the underground, resistance was stirring. A smuggler with contacts in the off-world colonies had gotten their hands on a Council data chip. A mistake, a huge one, because it didn't just list occupied worlds. It showed where the Council was weak, where they were spread too thin. The soldier knew what that meant. They're not invincible. They're just good at making us think they are. But knowing a weakness and exploiting it were two different things. The team's stolen ship was still docked, but the path back was swarming with Council drones. The engineer rigged a distraction, an old fuel line, set to blow and buy them a few precious seconds. It worked. Mostly. The explosion rocked the station, sending debris spinning into the void. They made it to the ship, but not without a cost. The hacker was hit, blood seeping through their makeshift armor. Don't stop, they gritted out, clutching the stolen data drive like it was the only thing keeping them alive. Maybe it was. As the ship hurtled away from Pluto, the linguist finally deciphered the last fragment of the Varric's message. It wasn't just a weapon. It was a map. Coordinates to something the Council had buried so deep, not even their own enforcers knew about it. A place called the Hollow Star. But before they could plot a course, the ship's sensors lit up. Incoming. Not just one ship, an entire fleet. The Council had sent hunters, and they weren't just here to kill them. They were here to erase everything the team had found. The soldier gripped the controls, teeth bared. Hold on, this is gonna get rough. Somewhere in the dark, the Hollow Star waited, and the Council would burn worlds to keep it hidden. But humanity had one advantage the Council never expected. We don't know when to quit. The ship's engine screamed as it twisted through the debris field, dodging plasma fire that lit up the blackness like deadly fireworks. Every alarm blared, shields at 12%, oxygen reserves leaking, the hull groaning under the strain. The soldier wrestled with the controls, veins standing out on their arms as they pushed the stolen vessel beyond its limits. We can't outrun them, they growled. Not like this. The hackers slumped in their seat, face pale from blood loss, but their grip on the data drive never wavered. Then we don't run, they coughed. We make them chase us right where we want them. The Hollow Star. The name alone sent a chill through the linguist's bones. The Varric's last message had been clear. It was a graveyard of dead worlds, a place the Council had sealed away. But why? What were they hiding there? The engineer's hands flew over the nav console, rerouting power to the thrusters. If we hit the jump coordinates exactly, we might make it. But it's gonna be close. Close wasn't good enough. Behind them, the Council fleet shifted formation, their sleek warships closing the distance. A voice crackled over the comms, cold, mechanical, utterly devoid of mercy. Surrender the stolen data, and your deaths will be swift. The soldier's laugh was sharp, bitter. Yeah, heard that one before. They slammed a fist on the jump drive. The ship shuddered, the stars stretching into blinding streaks of light as they punched into the void between seconds. When reality snapped back into place, the sight ahead stole their breath. The hollow star wasn't a planet. It wasn't a station. It was a wound in space itself, a swirling, unnatural darkness, ringed by the shattered remains of dead ships. Hundreds of them. Thousands. A graveyard of civilizations that had dared to resist. The linguist's voice was barely a whisper. This is where they bring the defiant. But the engineer saw something else. A pattern in the wreckage. A path. They're not just killing people here, they realized. They're hiding something. Something they're terrified of. Before anyone could respond, the scanners erupted. The Council fleet had followed. And this time, they weren't just sending hunters. They were sending something else. A ship, blacker than the void around it, slid into view. No lights, no markings, just a silent, jagged silhouette that made the soldiers' instincts scream. That's not one of theirs, they muttered. At least, not anymore. The hacker's bloodied fingers tightened around the drive. Then what the hell is it? The answer came in a burst of static. A voice, fractured and ancient, whispering through the ship's speakers. Not the Council. Not human. Something else. And it was calling their name. The hollow star wasn't just a grave. It was a prison. And whatever was inside. The voice from the hollow star wasn't just speaking. It was remembering. The words came slow at first, like a machine stirring to life after centuries of silence. Then, all at once, the truth crashed over them. This wasn't a prison. It was an archive. A record of every civilization the Council had ever crushed, every voice they'd tried to erase. And the thing calling to them, it wasn't a monster. It was a witness. The soldier's hands hovered over the controls, torn between fight and flight. If we let whatever that is out, we might be trading one nightmare for another. The hacker coughed, wiping blood from their lips, but their eyes burned with stubborn fire. Or we're handing the Council their first real defeat. Outside, the black ship pulsed with eerie light, its hull shifting like liquid shadow. The Council fleet had stopped advancing. For the first time, they hesitated. That told the team everything they needed to know. Whatever slept inside the hollow star, the Council feared it more than rebellion. The linguist's fingers flew over the console, feeding the Varric's data into the ship's systems. The message wasn't just a warning, they realized. It was a key. A series of symbols flashed across the screen. An invitation. A choice. The engineer didn't hesitate. They sent the signal. Space itself shuddered. The hollow star's dark core split open like a waking eye, and light, real, unfiltered starlight, poured out for the first time in millennia. The black ship dissolved into it, becoming something else, something alive. And then it spoke, not in words, but in memories. Images flooded the team's minds, 1,000 worlds rising up, 1,000 rebellions crushed. But also, hidden in the cracks, the one truth the Council had buried deepest. They weren't conquerors. They were cowards. The galaxy had belonged to others before them. Free, thriving civilizations that shared knowledge instead of hoarding it. The Council had rewritten history, painting themselves as rightful rulers. But the hollow star remembered. And now, so did everyone else. Across occupied space, the same signal blared from every screen, every comms device, echoing in the minds of every enslaved species. The Council's controls snapped like a frayed rope. Their ships wavered. Their enforcers faltered. Because fear only works when the oppressed don't realize their own strength. Back on Earth, the riots turned to revolution. The team's stolen data had given the resistance more than hope. It had given them a weapon. The truth. Weeks later, the soldiers stood on the deck of a reclaimed orbital station, watching as the last Council ships fled the system. The hacker, bandaged but alive, limped up beside them. Think they'll be back? The soldier smirked. Let them try. Somewhere in the dark, the hollow star's light still burned. Not as a grave, not as a prison, but as a beacon. The galaxy would never be the same. And humanity. We were just getting started.